0.2. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Tesla is flat, 0.2% at $183 per share, $570 billion of market cap, 42 PE ratio. Overall markets, all flat. Tech companies are down. Specifically, chip manufacturers are down. Semiconductor segment is leading the market down. Healthcare is up. Consumer defensive stocks are up. Interesting trading action, despite the fact that the GDP growth seems to be fine in Q4. As of December, we got personal income, personal spending figures surprising upward, as well as inflation coming down to 0.2% PCE prices, both headline and core, as of December. Next week, we have the Fed meeting, and I believe Chairman Powell will note the decline in inflation. Both 3-month and 6-month annualized figures are now below 2%. So inflation seems subdued. Well anchored, expectations seem well anchored. Things are moving in the right direction on the inflation front. The Treasury yield curve is up a few basis points today. 5-year Treasury yield is at 4.06%. 10-year Treasury yield is at 4.16%. Oil prices have been increasing to $78 per barrel for WTI. Intel is down 12% today. Pending home sales in December jumped 8.3%, but still very low levels. Omar is here. Let's bring him up. Wes is here. Ahmed is here too. It's a full house today. Is Machine here? We need to get Machine a blue check mark. Let's do a GoFundMe for a Machine blue check mark so that I can see. I don't have to scroll down to see him. Omar, how are you?
Hey, good morning. Feeling good.
Good. Good afternoon from Austin, Texas. Are you excited about my new YouTube channel that I put at the top?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. YouTube, does pay a revenue share if you get enough subscribers. I make a few $1,000s a month off YouTube. So I think it's a great idea. I'll subscribe.
Thank you. Yeah, I looked through the Creator Studio and they say I need 500 subscribers to start making money. So if anyone could please go up, like and subscribe. That I signed up for YouTube. I uploaded my first video. You will never guess what it's about. Anyway, Machine, how are you?
I feel a little different.
Why? Why are you sick? You shave your head?
I feel like I'm losing hair.
You're losing hair? Oh, I'm sorry. How are you gonna handle that? I know you identify with your hair.
Well, I'm just gonna try to post more Instagram photos of myself. before it comes out.
Is it because you tried to buy calls? That's a
Well, I
yes.
mean, tried is. I mean, I succeeded. I've succeeded in buying calls on the dip. Obviously, I
Machine
was
bought
absolutely
Tesla
confident.
calls and his hair immediately started falling out.
It says on the box as side effects.
You only should buy calls on the dip. That's for sure. But yeah, it can still add stress. But it's kind of insane. I mean, I am a degenerate now for sure, considering I went all in on Tesla in 2018, 2019, and made a lot of money and timed the market appropriately to sell the shares at the right time, or most of them. And then I started fiddling with options and fucked around and found out. And now I'm just like, whatever, like these huge fluctuations, I'm like not phased by. And I think my brain has like degenerated into some like null state that doesn't compute anymore. So something's wrong.
I also bought some calls, and they declined 50% in value the next day, and then I bought some more.
Dude, what is going on with your profile picture? Who is that handsome guy?
Who are you talking about?
Whoever's on your picture. He's got some nice hair, luscious lips.
I don't know, someone who clearly has a bunch of fake photos with fake friends. I think that's like generative AI at work. Because if you notice, all the people are different in every photo. There's no one repeated except for probably your family.
I
And
get that a lot actually. A lot of people tell me that. It's like you never, even not just on apps or Instagram or whatever, even in personal life, they're like, man, I've seen you in so many different versions of your hair and style and everything. And I don't even try to be that way. Anyway, maybe it'll help my YouTube social media influence game. How do you feel about my YouTube channel, Machine? Are you excited?
I feel nothing. I didn't even know. I don't follow you on Twitter. Um, I'll try to look at your
X.
post if you have anything relevant. X, whatever it is. So I didn't know you have a YouTube channel. What are you going to do in the YouTube channel?
Who knows? The world is always my oyster.
Upload
But
every space to YouTube. Duh.
yeah, I probably do that at a minimum.
I can help you figure out a way to automate that, where we could like have some, like browser automation script or something that just plays the space and records it, and then just post that up automatically.
Yeah,
And then it'd be easy for people to find, and they could potentially see the reactions and stuff, and the like stuff at the top of the screen, and then you'd make money every time people
yeah,
watched it.
yeah, that's great. That works for me. All right. What do you guys want to talk about today? We have Telescope in the house too. Let's bring them up. These frequent profile picture changes are throwing me off, Machine.
I apologize.
Let me ask you something. Did you look into this deferred tax asset topic at all?
I mean, this was well known by the quote economist on Tesla Motors Club, and I believe on X he's CPA and NYC or something. That's his handle. Uh, that was like the first thing he started bringing up as this huge tax deferred credit that would come up at some point and make a huge boon, artificially, in a sense, to the earnings, to the gap earnings. So I knew about it from years ago, but I think we just kind of forgot about it because everyone was just hoping it would be another, spurt boom to the stock on top of everything else, and that never kind of happened. And then I don't know, people forgot about it. So it was kind of funny that it happened now, and then all this obsession over it, and then it's not like a positive. It's not like people look at it and go, "Oh, look, more earnings," stock go up. And in fact, actually, now it kind of hurts in the sense that your income tax bracket is going to be higher for Tesla in the U.S. So it's going to hurt earnings a little bit, a few hundred million maybe. I don't know if that's per year or per quarter. So going forward, so that's a little bit of a discount on earnings. I guess not. I don't understand all this. You would understand better. Not on
Yeah.
the
Just why
operating
don't you just
income.
ask? I only threw it out to you because I fucking know you have no fucking clue what you're talking about when it comes to this topic. I just wanted to ask some questions.
So do you know about it? CPA?
Yeah, I know about this stuff.
Explain. Show
Well,
your
what do you want
worth
to know?
to the
Your worth.
space.
So we have
I don't even care about the
deferred.
past, right? I don't care about the past. I want to know now how much higher taxes is Tesla going to pay, and how much is it going to reduce their earnings?
Well, the CFO said on the call it's not going to have an impact on cash taxes. Like they would have paid cash taxes anyway, right? This is about the books, gap accounting, and everything. It's not going to make a huge difference, except that the company is making a lot of money now, so they were going to have to pay more tax anyway. The only surprising thing about the tax situation is actually unrelated to deferred tax assets. They said on the call that their tax rate is going to go up to what an average S&P 500 company pays, and that was a little higher than what I think the analysts estimated a little bit. So that's something we should look into, but that's a deeper topic. Deferred tax asset is basically when companies lose money for years and years, they can save on their future taxable income by recognizing the previous losses, right? Um, so deferred tax assets is a line item on the balance sheet, on the asset side of the balance sheet, that shows that future benefit of all the accumulated losses in the past. Okay. So Tesla accumulated all those losses in the last 20 years, 18, 19, 20 years, what have you. Now, per GAAP accounting rules, if management is not confident in making future profit, you can't show that deferred tax asset on your balance sheet. You have to recognize a contra asset account called a valuation allowance. Okay. So, say, go back 5 years ago, Tesla had accumulated 10 years of losses, but there was no future profitability in sight. Therefore, every time deferred tax asset increased with more losses, Tesla would also recognize a valuation allowance so that deferred tax asset balance did not show up on the balance sheet. Okay. Now, management finally made a decision that we are going to be profitable going forward. So we're going to be able to use that deferred tax asset to partially offset our future taxable income. Therefore, you no longer need that contra asset account called valuation allowance. So that valuation allowance is released. So this is all pretty much a non-cash accounting terms. It's a one-time benefit. So it showed up as a much higher GAAP income, but the non-GAAP income is unchanged. Okay, go ahead.
So I don't know if I'm interpreting you correctly, but this is what I interpreted from this whole sentiment, and understanding this from the accountant too, talking about it, is they would only recognize this when they're very sure in the future that they're going to be consistently profitable. And we're kind of surprised that in the previous few years that they wouldn't, because they were so profitable. It was kind of odd to think, well, wouldn't they be so confident now? And the fact that we've now had, quote, the dip with whatever quasi recession or a lag in demand and all that, and yet they're still profitable. And that this is the time where they can now confidently say we've hit the bottom of this local bottom, and we're still profitable. So we know now confidently in the future, as things get better, we're going to be even more profitable. We survived this like worst period, and so now we can confidently say we can take this deferment. I don't know. Does that jive with what you're saying?
So I mean, the key concept here is net operating loss. So the government says, look, you're a business, you got to give me 20% of your profits. So what are profits? It's the difference between what you make and what your costs are. But now a business says, hey, wait a minute, I lost $1 billion last year and I made $1 billion this year. Technically, I didn't really make any money. I'm kind of even. So you're going to tax me 200 million, even though in reality I haven't made anything? So they said, yeah, okay, that makes sense. We'll let you add up your losses from up to the previous 10 years and use that to offset any income you have, right? But so you can consider your loss from a prior year as an asset. But that asset only has value if you're going to pay taxes. If you are not making any profit and have no taxes to pay, then it has no value. So essentially what they're saying is 5 billion in taxes that we were going to have to pay, we're not paying. It's going to sort of enter our account because of those deferred tax assets. And we think of Tesla as being profitable for a long time and it being sort of certain that they would stay profitable. But really, you look at their history. When they became profitable, it was kind of during the pandemic, and there was a lot of uncertainty in that period. I think it was maybe hard to argue whether that profitability was really a result of the car shortage or something that could be sustained. Now we've entered sort of a much tougher market with higher inventories, and they've still managed the company well. So I think it makes sense for that accounting treatment that they're now recognizing that this is actually going to be quite a valuable tax deferred asset in that it'll save them billions of dollars on taxes. And then, the other kind of thing to understand is just like, so there's different levels of looking at the business. One is like, if you look at the gross margin, that's just the variable costs that go into the product. So the metal that goes into the car, that kind of stuff. Then you've got all the operational expenses, offices, factories, all the fixed costs. And then the net really looks at everything. It looks at, taxes, it looks at, depreciation and amortization, it looks at stock-based comp and all kinds of things that aren't necessarily cash items, but that we still deduct from earnings to get sort of an honest look at what the company is really making. So, although it's not related to the actual operational business, it's not related to the products per se. Taxes are obviously a real thing. So that's good that they're able to use that and recognize that, and kind of does symbolically signify that the company is entering into this new period where even in really tough times they maintain profitable.
Exactly. Great points. I would add one more thing to this. Okay. So Machine asked earlier, what's the impact on the future? There's one more thing. If you look at Google Finance, Yahoo Finance, etc., they have PE ratios indicated for each stock. Tesla's PE ratio just dropped a lot actually. It's 40 something now. It's no longer 70, 80, 100, etc. It's in part due to stock price decline, but also in part due to the E in the PE ratio on those websites is usually the GAAP earnings number. Okay. And because of this release of the valuation allowance against the deferred tax asset, our E on a GAAP basis just jumped. This has some implications because investment management firms, a lot of them, most of them really, if not all of them, they do a screening. There are thousands of stocks out there. They don't research tens of thousands of stocks out there. They first do a screening. It might be something like, I want to see only companies that have revenue growth over 20% in the last 5 years annualized. Or it might be something like, I only want to see companies that have a PE ratio of less than 50. Now, if it's less than 50, Tesla wouldn't have showed up in the before this release of the valuation allowance, but now it would show up on that screen. Now I'm just arbitrarily picking numbers, so there's no, like, 50 is not a magical number. Some might say 30, some might say 20, some might say 80, etc. Depending on if they're a growth investment firm, value, etc. But so there's also that impact as well. You know, you're not going to hear a lot of accounts out there that says, well, PE ratio for Tesla is still sky high. Well, it's actually in the 40s now. It's not 80. Joey.
Yeah, the only quick thing I would add to the breakdown that you gave, Yaman, is like the general concept is this is kind of like a true up between your income tax and your financial statements. So it's like cash accounting versus accrual accounting. So this is actually an effort to have a more accurate depiction of their earnings. And this isn't the only type of adjustment that comes up. This is just the one that we see today. So, I mean, from an accuracy, like the objective is to accurately show the earnings, and that's what they're doing now that they have a more than likely evaluation of it.
All right, thank you. Let's see, what else can we ask Joey while he's up here? Joey, what were your impressions of the earnings?
Yeah, I mean, the earnings, nothing was surprising. I mean, obviously we got hit because of no guidance and stuff, but I'm excited. Yeah, that's all I will really say.
All right, great, thank you. Machine, let me ask you a question. Put down that Popeyes. How confident are you in terms of percentage? So this is really a question of execution risk. Okay. How confident are you that Tesla Optimus will beat the likes of Figure and others? I think there are a lot of robotics companies to, let's say, 1 million humanoids, useful humanoids. 1 million useful humanoids.
The higher the volume, the higher the confidence, because that's where Tesla succeeds. Already has proven the ability to ramp up production of, large complex manufacturing processes. So, just take that principle in general. That if you said millions of units, 10 million units, right, and then you become very confident that Tesla would be the first. I don't know if you're specifying mostly bipedal robots. I mean, there are many robot arms already, so I don't like. You have to delineate what complexity of robot.
Humanoids. So
Humanoid, right?
bipedal, of course.
Yeah. So I don't really see who else is working on humanoid robots that has much manufacturing prowess, or obviously the software scale to where they would be able to support a variety of tasks that would need to be generated to support 1 million robots. There are other companies now outside of Figure. Let's say there's like these other robots like the Agile. I forget the name of the robot. It's kind of like a walking humanoid robot. I don't even think it has. I don't even know if it has like useful arms. I think it has useful arms somewhat. And that's something that you could see. Well, they've been working on it a while. They could deploy it to do some tasks, but could they really deploy 1 million? Do they even have the manufacturing capabilities or the software needed to support that? I don't think so. So I think 1 million is pretty high, and I would say I would assign, about a 70% chance that Tesla would be first to 1 million, at least 70%.
How do you compare Optimus versus Figure and others, call it Figure and al, to FSD versus Waymo and others?
It's an interesting question. I would say there is an analogy there, because if you look at some of the other robotics, there's definitely robotics companies that have been around longer and have more advanced demos of technology. Obviously, the most obvious one is Boston Dynamics, but they kind of serve a smaller niche market, mostly supporting, I believe, defense contracts, and aren't necessarily as scalable. And you could make the analogy with Waymo, that Waymo also serves a more niche market, focusing on specific geographies that may take longer to scale. So I'm just trying to establish that analogy. I would definitely say Waymo is in a more superior position relative to these other robotics companies versus against Tesla in those two domains. Waymo clearly is scaling up a bit. As we talked earlier in the week about them announcing a bigger geographic rollout on the peninsula here in the Bay Area, covering like 1 million people, and same in West Los Angeles. And while that's not full scale, that's not nothing. And that's much different than Boston Dynamics or these other humanoid robotics companies. So they've been around for a long time, and they're building up structures that maybe they don't have enough data, but they have the software chops to scale their learning methodologies, machine learning methodologies, that if they did get enough data, they would be able to generate software products for autonomous driving that would be really useful. Whereas these robotics companies are very far away from doing that at scale. Even coming up with the tasks and the data to train them on, they're much further behind. They're not ahead of Tesla by much, and they're certainly not really ahead in manufacturing. So they're in a much weaker spot, I think, than Waymo.
Okay, before I go to Omar for the same question, I want to recognize you for being one of the first in this space to say Tesla has a chance to $1 billion of profits with Optimus, possibly before Tesla robotaxis. And now we're starting to see a couple more people agree with you. Still very early stage, right? You're still in the far minority. I'm with you, but almost 95% of people think robotaxis will be first billion. So there's still a lot of ground to go. But how did you see that post that you posted today? You were on Tesla Motors Club, and somebody said what?
Well, I just see a little more sentiment shifting to the idea of the bot generating more revenue more quickly than robotaxis. And I've seen that sentiment shift on posts. You see it on Twitter, you see it on Tesla Motors Club, where I wasn't seeing this even 6 months ago. And I think part of that, it's two things happening, right? FSD is progressing, but progressing more slowly than people had hoped, and Optimus is progressing perhaps a bit more quickly than people thought. So those two trajectories, the slopes there have shifted a bit in people's minds versus what they thought before. And that's not static. That could change again in another direction, based on what happens with V12, or what happens with the next AI day or videos that they send out. But for me, I try to take an approach of studying from first principles of understanding robotics, understanding the problems, because I work in data science and somewhat in robotics, or used to, and just really thinking that problem is more tractable in robotics, and you can more clearly crop out a subset of tasks away from other tasks that may be more challenging and provide a useful product. That's much harder to do with robotaxis, as we've discussed before. So I'm less variable on what they post with videos in my belief, and that's why I'm pretty confident on it. It'll take a lot of opinion. What would require me to change my opinion is really obviously robotaxi let's say FSD V12, if it's V12, really showing like no disengagements at some point this year, and then I would certainly be possible to change my sentiment.
Okay, great. Yeah, very impressive. You have a very impressive track record. To what extent do you
What's
think
going on here? What's going on?
I'm becoming a social media influencer now? I have to
Why are you complimenting me
play.
all the time?
I have to play nice with everybody.
It's so weird. I feel weird.
No, I genuinely mean it. I'm not trying. I'm just joking about the social media stuff. I genuinely mean it. I think that you're very impressive. If you want another example of it, when I first saw Troy, his accounts and his tweets and everything, we blocked each other, and I used to reply to his stuff, and he used to reply to my stuff on Tesla Motors Club and here and there. And after people prove themselves, they win a few coffee bets. What they say turns out to be true. If I'm wrong, then that's quickest way for me to respect somebody. Um, so yeah, you have a very impressive track record. To what extent do you think you're bringing people to your side because of your hair and your perfect English and your Ivy League education?
I think those all count. I think if you compare me to you or Omar, and clearly I have better English. I don't repeat the same words over and over again like Omar. I don't post shirtless photos of myself like you. So those things all allow people to take me more seriously than others. And yeah, they understand what I'm saying. It makes sense. I speak to the common man. I grew up in the Midwest. You don't even understand the Midwest. You're a Texas kid now. Omar and the rest of the speakers are like California boys. I understand real Americans. I lived in all parts of the US and other parts of the world, so I can speak to people at different levels, and that's why they will follow me, and they will follow me to Jonestown, Guyana. I have some cool.
When are you going to announce your presidential candidacy?
Well, look, Joe Biden is so old. These candidates are so old. I like anyone. Just pick a random person in the world, in the U.S. They're 35 years old at least, and I think if they could speak well, if you're like 6 foot tall, male, you could probably win the presidency. If you're just not a total idiot. So I don't know. Maybe I should run.
All right. Machine mentioned shirtless pics. I created a YouTube account at the top of your screens. If you could please go and subscribe to my YouTube account. I will be posting many more shirtless pics on there. Omar, so what do you think about FSD versus Waymo and others? How does that compare to Optimus versus Figure and others?
I mean, I don't know. I don't really take Figure all that seriously, to be honest. Um, it's cool, but are they really going to, mass produce these and get them out? Are they even gonna actually make their BMW deal a reality where their things are making cars? If they do, I'll be very impressed, and I'll admit that I underestimated them. But I'm skeptical. And even if they can figure it out, can they sort of mass produce it? I'm not really sure. The guy's other company, Archer Aviation, what are they doing exactly? They're actually publicly traded. Let's see. Yeah, so They're down about 50%. So, I think really Tesla has some really unique assets here with the bot that make it really interesting to me. One is that they have a global manufacturing footprint and they have experience in mass production. The chance of some startup figuring out how to manufacture millions of robots versus a company that's already manufacturing millions of robots essentially. You have batteries, you have motors, you have computers, you have software, all the same things, being assembled. You need, a smaller version of them for the robot. You need, actuators, that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of similarities there. And I think their supply chain team, their production team, their existing footprint of factories around the world will be a key asset. And as we know with deep learning, really, there's sort of a flywheel function in getting a lot of hardware out there and getting it used. And I think that'll give them a strong software lead as well. The other thing is that they have experience developing FSD and delivering it at a reliability that is basically unheard of in the world of, deep learning. Like I've been talking to ChatGPT and making these images and stuff like that, and it's amazing how unreliable these models really are, right? You have to really prompt it a few times to try and get to generate the image you want. And you can't say, you know, uh, draw a man without a beard because it'll just put a beard on him. You have to say, put a clean shaven man or something like that. So these models are cool, but they're not very accurate. You kind of have to fiddle around with them versus FSDs driving me around with an amazing degree of reliability. The amount of interventions I have to make is a lot less than what you would expect. So I think those things are really going to sort of set them apart in robotics. And they have a massive amount of training compute already. They've got projects like Dojo that have the potential to dramatically lower their cost of training. They've got a custom silicon team for inference as well. So, I like Tesla right now, but who knows? Maybe Figure will surprise me.
Thanks, Omar. Ellie Meso. All right. I mean, don't you think they're going to sell to Google? Like, if I'm Google, I would probably look into buying Figure.
Why?
I think Google will be great at, developing the AI, but I don't know, maybe I'm a little bit more impressed by Figure than you are.
And what have they really done besides show some videos? They need to actually ship a product. If they have a product on the shelf and it's at an affordable price and it's actually reliable, then yeah, they'll sell it. But when are they going to do that? I'm not sure.
Yeah. Machine, do you have many other, do you have any other startup companies that you're kind of keeping your eye on for robotics?
I honestly forget my post. When I looked many months ago, I thought there was a few other humanoid robotics. I thought one was Agile. Agile. I can't remember the name, and there was one other one. I wasn't super impressed by them. I mean, they seem more focused on that. They had a little better. They were further along on the gait, the walking aspect, which is important. But they weren't super impressive on any of the like dexterity tasks. So I will have to go do some further research on that. I think before I can stay safely. Maybe I should. Maybe I should make a X post. Maybe I should make a YouTube channel where I go through
You have a
all
YouTube
the
channel,
robotic.
don't you?
I had one and I I had to discard it because people started using my name, so
Mm.
I had to stop that.
Yeah, we should probably get together a list of about 5 companies or so, 5, 10 companies, and kind of keep track on their different approaches, where they're progressing, where they're not progressing.
You should fly out to San Francisco, and me, you, Machine, and Meta all go for an FSD ride, and you upload it to your YouTube channel.
Sounds good.
Shirtless, right?
Everybody has to be shirtless. Can I wear my cowboy hat? Yeehaw!
Sure.
Just
All right.
your cowboy hat.
Did you have another dream or something?
No, don't bring up that one dream that you two got into my dream, like some Inception bullshit. I don't know what went on there.
Joe Tagmeyer is posting pictures of the Cybertruck. But it's still kind of trickling out, you know. Somebody told me that, they're not still very low volume. And you can see it in the pictures too. Only a handful or so coming out. What do you think? What do you think is going to make a difference here, Machine? When should we expect to see a nice rise in Cybertruck production?
I don't know what the limiting factors are. They make it seem like it's not 4680, so they didn't provide more clarity on if it's the air bending of the stainless steel or what else. So I don't know what's the gating factor right now. Do we know? Do we have any information?
I mean, I don't think they were. I don't think they're necessarily saying 4680 production is that high as they were saying General Assembly is so slow that 4680 isn't even the gating factor.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, that's at least you have some common sense. There's some people who listen to the call and like, look, 4680 is doing great. I'm like, no, that's not what they said. They said basically it's so slow, Cybertruck production, that 4680 is not a limiting factor. It doesn't mean 4680 is doing great. And then people start coming up with these amazing production rates of 4680. They're like, well, once they install 4 lines, they're going to be at 100 gigawatt hours per year. I'm like, wait a second. If we did a quick calculation, and let's say they're producing 500 Cybertrucks a week right now. I don't know. That seems kind of reasonable? Like maybe that's a little high or a little low. I don't know. And if it's over like 120 kilowatt hours per pack, you annualize that. I think that's like it's around like 3 gigawatt hours, which on one line that's supposed to do 25 just shows you that it's at like what 12% of capacity utilization rate. So if they install 3 more lines, they may go from 3 to 12, and that could be enough to support Cybertruck. But then obviously they have to speed them up. Oh, is that it? Do you just turn the knob? You turn the knob from a 1 to a 8, and you're done? I don't think so. How are they going to speed it up 8x? That's what's the limiting factor there? It's probably dry battery electrode, but I don't know for sure. So that's still not a solved problem. So I have no confidence that they're going to 100 gigawatt hours of production, especially assuming they're going to do 25 per line. Like they seem still far away from that. So there was no update to that to me from the earnings call.
I mean, I think what they're doing in Nevada and in Texas, they describe, putting up more manufacturing lines. I don't think they would do that if there's some huge problem. From what we're hearing, even, in the Reuters report, the dry battery electrode coating is actually working pretty well. But the challenge is really just making the process run faster because it's never been done before, really, not at high volume. So it's working pretty well. You got the Cybertrucks driving around, they got DB batteries in them, and they're working fine. But, they really just want to make sure, like, I think the Reuters article mentioned, like, at high speeds, there was maybe a temperature issue that was causing them to, like, become gooey or something like that. So there have been like a number of issues as they've ramped up, and each time they try and get the process going faster, there's new sort of engineering issues they have to work through. So I think they're going to continue to do that. I don't think they would be expanding in Nevada or in the Texas line if they thought there was some big showstopper or something like that. And in the worst case scenario, you could just not use dry battery coating and just use a traditional anode and cathode through a wet process. But I think they are actually, you know, I mean, chemistry is really hard. It's not like software. They are actually making really good progress, I think, on the dry battery electrode. And I think they will figure out how to produce it at scale, and they will succeed in actually delivering, high volumes. They did mention in the earnings deck Cybertruck production will be slower due to the complexity. I took that as kind of a bad sign on 4680 outlook, maybe suggesting, and I don't know for sure, but I would suspect 4680 would be sort of the key factor there in a slower ramp up. Um, but if they can figure out how to do this at scale, then it's just going to be glorious because they'll be able to put up new lines at a fraction of the cost compared to the old process, and that'll give us all the cell capacity we want potentially. So it's definitely one of those things that's hard but worth it.
Didn't they announce in Nevada that they're building out now the new building for the semi, but not new battery lines right now?
Did they say that on the call?
I thought I heard or read that somewhere, that it wasn't including battery lines, which is kind of part of um, the concern, in my opinion.
Yeah, I didn't see that piece of information. I just remember them on the call talking about how they were building new lines in Texas, building new lines in Nevada. So I assume that's still on track for this year. I think they actually went into some detail. Let me see if I can look at the transcript and see what exactly they said.
Machine, while Omar looks at that, I pinned at the top a post by Larry Goldberg. Larry already created a table that I thought that you would have. And Larry also has better hair than you do. So therefore, I think we're going to replace you with Larry.
I mean, that's fine. He did more work than me, and he's got Australian or Kiwi accent. So I mean, that's more unique as well. So I mean, I wouldn't mind it. Replace me.
So while Omar looks that up, this table shows Optimus, Boston Dynamics, Atlas, Agility, Robotics, Digit, Figure, 1X Technologies, Sanctuary AI, Eptronic Apollo, Courier Intelligence, Unitree. And in the columns, he's got funding, engineering skills, AI training resources, electronic skills, chip development, prototype production, size of staff, production facilities. Interesting. So he has Optimus at the very top, and then Boston Dynamics, Hyundai second. Yeah, very interesting. But I mean, if Boston Dynamics is number 2, man, wow. I think Optimus might be one of those areas where you need a telescope to see Tesla.
Interesting. It's kind of hard to tell from the shitty transcript what exactly they're saying. I might need to play the audio. But they're saying what's the barrier to getting 4680 into a multi-million production rate? Well, Cybertruck's not limited by 4680. There's entire companies, all they do is make batteries. We have a lot of technology in this. It's not just a new size format. In Q4, we swapped line 1 from the Model Y design to the Cybercell design, adding 10% higher energy density. With any new product introduction, in terms of what we're doing, we're currently running one production line, one assembly line, using 2 assembly lines in addition for yield and rate improvement trials. And we have a 4th in commissioning, and 4 more will be installed starting in Q3 this year. So definitely a big year for ramping 4680.
Well, the second set of 4 lines are going to be installed, but they're going to take some time to ramp, right, Machine?
I would assume so. Hopefully.
And what's the
less than-
capacity of each line? Do we know that for sure, or
I
is it
thought it
kind of
was
estimated?
25. 20. I thought 25 gigawatt
Did
hours.
you just get into an ICE vehicle? What are you driving?
I'm sitting at a viewpoint. I'm working at a viewpoint. I like to work in my car sometimes. Got nice views in here off of 280, and I just have the window open. So there's a disgusting truck just next to me. Turn on his engine. He lit a fire. This guy had to light a fire under the hood to get his car running. Think about how absurd this old technology is that other people use, and still no one wants
Okay.
to buy EVs.
Just want to make sure.
And
it's
you're
not
running
you.
hardware 2.5.
Inches.
We're going to sit in silence after that comment for a minute.
Breakthrough technologies that take time to figure out with 46. It's not just that it's a 46 millimeter diameter by 80 millimeter full cell. That's just the diameter. That's just the dimensions. There's a tremendous amount of new technology in the cell itself and manufacturing. Yes, exactly.
And just regarding what the team was able to do in Q4, Texas successfully swapped line 1 from the Model Y design of the cell to the Cybertruck design of the cell, which was the 10% cell energy increase I've mentioned before. And as with any major new product introduction, the factory and engineering teams collaborated to ensure quality of the new design and the process changes as their first priority. And now our focus returns to cost and production ramp in Q1. In terms of what we're doing, we're currently running 1 production line, 1 assembly line, using 2 assembly lines in addition for yield and rate improvement trials. And we have a 4th in commissioning, and 4 more will be installed starting in Q3 this year. So definitely this is a big year for ramping 4680.
We will still do one amp.
Okay, so that's interesting. What he said is we've got 1 production line, 1 assembly line, and 2 additional assembly lines that we're using for trialing yield and efficiency improvements. So they're not really running the 3 lines. They're kind of running the 1 line, but sometimes they'll practice with 3 just to kind of see how it would go with, multiple lines.
That we also expect to ramp orders from our suppliers. Yep. So this is not about replacing our suppliers; it's about supplementing our suppliers.
Yes.
So we are very appreciative of our suppliers. Panasonic obviously is our longest. It's a random show enough to be implemented. That's what.
Okay.
So do we expect Tesla to have capacity of 200 gigawatt hours per year production at Giga Texas by the end of this year or early next year, Machine?
I'm sorry. Do we expect how much?
Sounds like maybe 2025 would be the earliest if they're installing the new lines in Q3.
So just in time for the next gen compact vehicle, right?
Yeah.
All right. Meta, welcome. How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys doing? Sorry for the background noise if there's any.
Nope, no, it's fine. Omar, any updates on V12? How is it doing for you? You mentioned yesterday that there might be another dot update coming, right?
Yeah, so I've been getting a lot of questions about V12. People asking why is it not rolling out to more people? When is it going to roll out to more people? Um, I'm going to do a video with AI driver today, I think. And I think Chris from Dirty Tesla DM me is like, hey, can I come fly out from Michigan and drive your car? And I'm like, well, I don't really let anybody else drive my car, but I'll drive around with you in it. And he's like, okay, yeah, I'll book my flight. So now I'm like, fuck, I don't want to hang out with this many people. Like, I don't want to say no to people I'm friends with, but I don't want to like be meeting all these people. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I will have to probably show a lot of people. Hopefully, they roll it out soon.
Wait a
But
second.
basically,
Wait. I asked you for a ride, and instead, you're literally flying people in from other parts of the
no,
country
no, no.
to
I'll
get
give
these
you a ride
rides.
too. I'll give you a ride too. Don't worry. But this is just what I'm saying is like now everybody wants a fucking ride. If I'm giving everyone rides, I'm not going to be able to do anything else. Like I'm lazy. I want to sit here and tweet. I can't be giving people rides all the time. But I will give you a ride. I'll give you know. I mean, hopefully they just roll it out to everybody soon. But so basically, when they called me, they said, "Look, this is kind of a rough early version. It's not quite ready to go out to everybody, but we want to start seeding it out to a few customers. We're sending it to about 100 people." And people say, "Is Omar the only one who got it?" And no, I'm not the only person who got it, but most of these people are like well respected people with jobs. I'm the only person who's just like making videos about it, right? The other people are like, Tim Zaman, who used to work at Tesla, and like, other friends of the company, really. Like, so a very limited set of people who have been, hand selected as people who understand that this is an early build and are not going to have an issue with it. And I told them, look, yeah, I've been testing this for a while. It's fine. So, yes, it has dramatic improvements. It can do things that the old versions never could do. It's improved in many ways. It also has some bugs in it. Meta and I talked about how when we were driving, it just kept throwing up the red hands. It hasn't done that since the first day, but that's the kind of, bug I'm talking about. There have also been more safety critical interventions, whereas V11, I almost never had a safety critical intervention. There have been two times when I took over because I was kind of like afraid about it hitting another car, which would never happen on V11. So, there's a little bit more tuning I think that's needed there. And then, there was also some other minor issues, some regressions compared to V11, where, for example, it's stopping or it's hesitating. It's stopping at a stop line, a stop sign, and waiting until the traffic light turns green up ahead. So like minor little issues and regressions like that. Overall, a big positive, but a couple things really left to be fixed. And I imagine they already have a new version of the model training that fixes many of these issues. Hopefully. Um, and then, of course, there's the whole thing of San Francisco. The team lives in San Francisco. The Bay Area is obviously the best place. I've talked to somebody, other Tesla employees. There's thousands of Tesla employees testing this, and I talked to one who's in Minnesota, and he said, "Yeah, I'm having some trouble with the auto set speed. I had to turn it off. It kind of felt like it was brake checking the guy behind me. Sometimes it would, lower the speed." So I had to turn that off, and now I'm back to manually setting the speed. And I said, "Oh, I haven't had any issue with that. I still have the auto set speed on, but as I haven't left San Francisco, there's always the possibility that outside San Francisco, the performance is significantly worse than what I'm seeing. And you would almost sort of maybe expect some regressions in that area. Elon did mention in the tweet it's working well in California. It is having some issues with precipitation, so maybe that would almost be something to expect. I haven't even taken it to LA yet, really. But I could see it basically, the rumor was that it would start going out to early access testers this weekend. So maybe that's going to happen. Who knows? But I expect really in the next couple weeks, we'll start with early access testers and gradually roll it out. I think probably before the end of the quarter, we could do a wide release where anybody who has FSD beta could get it.
No hands mode.
I had a couple of follow-up thoughts. I know this is like way delayed, but if you recall when the vehicle was following the stoplight and not the stop sign, it was like a short distance away from the stoplight and it was dark. Have you observed this in the daytime as well, or was it just that kind of one time or around that
I
time
think
of
it
night?
was one time in the day, one time in the night, but then I also had situations yesterday where it didn't do that, where there was a stop sign up ahead and a stoplight behind it, and it handled it well. So I said, "Oh, okay, good. It didn't have the issue that time." So I don't know if it's fixed or if it only just occurs with short distances or whatever. But I'm just giving, like, a lot of people ask me, like, "Well, what is it that you know? Why can't they just send it to me now?" So these aren't like huge issues. You just push the accelerator pedal and it goes. But you know, they are minor regressions. They're not things that happened on V11. So I imagine they want to get those ironed out, hopefully, before they go wide release. And there's probably a million other issues that I haven't seen yet.
Yeah, I've been thinking about it, and it's like when people say it drives very human-like, I think the errors it's making now are also more human-like when you think about it, right? There are times when you're going to pull in and there's like that you got to take the next right and people don't know exactly which, lot you're supposed to go into and you might pull into the wrong lot. And I could see maybe it didn't recognize the street to the side or something here and there. So I think it'll get better. The fact they're on hardware
Yeah.
4 at least puts, it's not a hardware 3 issue. I guess people might
Yeah.
jump to
I mean, I think
conclusions.
some of these might actually be hardware 4 related issues because this is the first time they've had a hardware 4 build. And literally the first day they had a hardware 4 build, they sent it to me. So, like, it could be that the higher resolution of the cameras or something is picking up that traffic light in more detail than it otherwise should have been or something. I don't know. I haven't tried it on hardware 3 yet. Actually, I should message them and say, hey, can you send it to my dad's hardware 3 car as well? But yeah, so we'll see, really. But I think there's going to be some level of regressions when it goes wide, like some steps back. But I think people are going to be pretty happy with it overall, and they'll kind of accept, um, that there may be a little bit of a step back in some minor areas. But I think they're just going to see it as a huge overall improvement, and hopefully those issues can then be addressed relatively quickly. I'm excited for like the first point update or something to roll out and really get a sort of data point on how quickly the FSD12 system is evolving.
In this new format of shorter spaces, we're not accepting requests to speak unless if a speaker is approved ahead of time. So if you have a comment, please leave it in the replies. I'm constantly monitoring the replies to see if there's a good question. Meta, I see you posted Ray's BYD debuts 4680 versus 46120 LFP battery cells. Do you have any comments on it?
Sure. There was one question about V12. Do you want me to answer that one first or switch
Yes,
topics?
please. Go ahead.
Okay. So there was a question about how are the visualizations generated on screen for V12. The way the graphics are generated, we can tell that they're obviously not voxels because when you see a car, it's always a Tesla. So these are just standard graphics that you see, the standard approach that you do it. So effectively, just like the perception stack used to output a um, interface language, if you will, or like or API, whatever you want to call it, a protocol buffer of this is what's happening in the scene right now, and then that would be rendered onto the screen. You can imagine that the end-to-end system was given the task of you need to emit controls and this interface, right? So there's no limit to how many states the end-to-end network can emit, but you can just imagine like controls and what's on the screen are both being tested. And if they see glitches or bugs on what's on the screen versus what's actually there, they could probably highlight those and help the model train. And I'm guessing one of the, this is easier than we thought, discoveries might have been the fact that you don't actually need to pull that out from the incision in the middle of the net. You can actually get it all the way at the end of the net and it preserves. And the fact that it makes it all the way to the end means the neurons that were used to construct the scene can contribute to planning and other things. So I think that's a cool thing, and they most likely got to use all their perception stack testing and things like that to just train that part of the neural net. So there's a lot of cool techniques they could have used, and yeah, I think it's a good thing, but we have seen at least one example recently of where the perception was wrong. It's been a really long time since I saw something wrong until Wife of Dirty Tesla posted that picture of a green light when it was actually red.
I saw someone post a question just now in the replies where they said, "How are the visualizations generated?" And it's kind of interesting because I think the end-to-end sort of planning and control system seems to often act on things that aren't displayed in the visualization. Like I've seen it stop and wait for a pedestrian, for example, that had an umbrella over their head, and the visualization wasn't recognizing it as a pedestrian, but the end-to-end system, even though it didn't look like a person and may not have been picked up by like a person object classifier, still said like, okay, that's a human like thing that's moving, and still reacted to it even though the visualization didn't pick it up. So this kind of shows how it can respond much quicker. It kind of sees the pedestrian before and can plan and control more seamlessly, because instead of just having this sort of task of identifying a human and finding something that looks like a human, it's just, when do I decide to go?
Yeah, and when we talk about how they use the previous testing to like make sure that the neurons worked well, it's very possible that the model learned not to visualize a human with an umbrella on their head, but also not to drive into them. And that stuff can be fixed over time, but the visualization is really supposed to just drive comfort for humans. Over time, you imagine all the neurons that are being spent on visualization can go away and get even better at driving.
It kind of seems like it's just the old perception model just running, and maybe doesn't actually have anything to do with what V12 is actually doing.
If that was the case, then they would have a lot of extra compute dedicated to that, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. But it seems like it's running at a pretty low frame rate.
Can you
Like
Yeah,
guys
it
hear me?
seems like the frame rate's slower than before. So,
interesting. So you're saying like it's not updating as much?
I mean, I don't want to say it's because they said, okay, just turn it down and, we can still have it there. But, it could be a number of reasons. It could just be they have some, system level debugging or something. They wrote like printf something and, that's causing the frame rate to be lower or something. But that's what I am seeing. It looks like the frame rate is slightly lower on the visualization.
Yeah, one thing to think about is when they present things like slowing down or moving into this lane or things like that, at least those states probably are going to come from the end-to-end net. It's possible that they're running two systems, but the downside of doing that is then every now and then you're going to see disagreement where maybe the visualization sees a semi truck, which is not there, and the planner says drive on through it. So you could have these weird situations occur more if that is in fact the case. Either way, I think that's too much of a minutia thing. Should we switch topics?
We have more.
Well, we got Sawyer in here.
Yeah. Just one quick question from Aaron. Have you noticed any improvements in lane drift in Minnesota? On 11.4.9, I would constantly be annoyed by how often FSD would choose to enter a turn lane when the navigation clearly shows to go straight. Omar, did you used to have any lane drift in San Francisco or LA?
No, I never experienced that. Our style of turn lanes are different from the issues that have that. Like, we have this little curved line that opens up to the turn lane, so they look different. So the car doesn't jump into them. But the states that have this issue their turn lanes just kind of look like regular lanes. But I know now why the lane drift issue wasn't fixed. It's because V12 just fixes everything. And I think they kind of just were focusing on that. And they've been working on that since like December 2022. So I bet you it'll fix the lane drift issue. I'd be very surprised if it doesn't.
Okay, so you're welcome. How are you?
Good. Just shared some news on
What's the news?
so I guess yesterday or no, today, the governor of New York State did a press conference and she announced that Tesla's gonna invest $500 million to install a supercomputer in Buffalo, New York. I'm pretty sure it's Dojo. It's just by the amount, and all these publications are calling it Dojo and not in an Nvidia system. I'm pretty sure the Nvidia systems Tesla would get are more expensive. So this, I'm pretty sure it's Dojo. But anyway, I posted it.
I pinned it at the top. Matt, what are your initial thoughts on this?
I hope it's both. Like maybe it's Dojo. Maybe they're finally getting a big order in from TSMC, but I don't know why you would have to care about that because like if they just put the Nvidia clusters up, which it sounded like a few weeks back we heard that somebody had gotten approved from Elon to actually build out a bigger data center. I can't recall if that was regarding Nvidia or not. Maybe that's related to this. It could have been that that approval was to finally go forward with Dojo. Who knows? It could be either, but either way, it's a good thing that they weren't computing.
Yeah, this is awesome news. With V12, we're going to need all the compute we can get. And it's interesting, Elon reiterating on the call that more than anything, we're compute constrained for the progress of FSD. So putting up more compute, I imagine it'll probably have Dojo and Nvidia, but maybe it'll be Dojo only. Who knows? Um, I think that's going to be really crucial. And they haven't been doing it. They didn't do an AI day in 2023, right? So this is typically a recruiting event. Again, suggesting that really compute was the limiting factor at this stage more than talent. And then finally, the last point that I thought of was really, the labeling team has been in Buffalo, right? So they've been labeling everything. As we move into V12, there's a lot less labeling required in many cases. I mean, they'd already moved to the auto labeler, but now you kind of are just finding the video clip that you think is a good driving behavior, and it's already sort of pre-labeled by the driver's manual controls. So it's possible there could have been a planned reduction in staff as a result of some of these changes they've made where they're less reliant on labeling. And I mean, this is a whole thing with Buffalo. They have certain employment commitments that they made. I think it was part of the Solar City deal too. And they said we're going to have a certain number of jobs here, so that they ended up just started labeling autopilot data there. But if they reduce that, what are they going to do? Okay, well, great. Now they have these Dojo jobs, and they can run a data center there. And I mean, that's going to be huge for the community there.
So the governor said Tesla. Well, here I'll just play the part.
I'm also proud to announce that Tesla is investing $500 million to build their next supercomputer right here in Buffalo. How about that?
So when she says their next supercomputer, I feel like this is Dojo, but maybe it's Nvidia. I don't know. All the
Yeah,
outlets are calling it Dojo, but maybe they have information on. I don't.
it comes down to how technical you think the governor was when they were speaking.
Exactly. I highly doubt they would be technical.
I mean, I think like any data center Tesla builds would probably have Dojo and Nvidia. Like it sounds like from Elon's comments that he said Dojo is running and we are doing training jobs on it. But he's always said the real test is going to be when the engineers want to use Dojo instead of Nvidia. And it doesn't sound like they've crossed that barrier yet, especially with the way Nvidia's been improving their hardware. So I think they probably will have Dojo there. I would hope that if the Dojo project does well, Dojo 1.5, Dojo 1.2, that the majority of their training capacity additions could be Dojo. Google says they do 90% of their training on TPUs. But I wouldn't be surprised to see some NVIDIA hardware there if you are sort of running all the infrastructure, running all the cooling, everything, the networking for a data center anyway.
Yeah, the other thing, there's a bit of a chicken and egg problem. And so this is a little bit of conjecture, but if you had to go to Elon to get approval for something, it's probably not to buy something you already are kind of doing. So there's some sense that you would need to get approval probably more for Dojo than a business decision about buying more NVIDIAs and then posting about that. The second thing I would say is um, the engineers at Tesla will continue to probably use whatever compute is more available. So if only 10% of the compute is Dojo, they're probably going to fine tune their models and optimize them for NVIDIA. At some point, when you think Dojo's ready, you have to scale it up large enough that some teams go, you know what, we're going to be able to get a lot more capacity if we just switch over to Dojo, because that's non-zero amount of work. And then the last thing is there will definitely be some pipeline, some training or eval or something that was fine-tuned for CUDA. It's working just fine. There's no new things they want to add to it. So they'll just continue to run that on NVIDIA. There's no point in taking on extra work just to move it over to another piece of hardware.
You know, what my concern really with Dojo V1 is the architecture is really so novel, and they've done so many different things really with the multi-chip module and sort of like it's very simplified. You know, the CPU doesn't have virtual memory or anything like that, and it can't really. It's difficult to really be a drop-in NVIDIA replacement. Like if you hire some new engineer out of college or something, or from one of the other FANG companies, and they're sort of familiar with training on an NVIDIA stack, and you go, okay, we got to learn this new architecture, this Dojo computer, which is probably not really that documented, and we're still working out issues ourselves. And you don't want to slow down the team because you're telling them you want to use Dojo. Like I think they've got an amazing silicon team now with Pete Bannon leading it. Like I think that's great that they are trying to build their own silicon that will meet the needs better. But yeah, that's going to be the real test when you hear Tesla really saying, "Yeah, we're just expanding Dojo. That's what, our team prefers to use now as opposed to Nvidia." And I think one thing that could really help with that, as well as help the value to other companies, is if they made it much easier for people to migrate their training workloads from Nvidia to Dojo without doing a ton of rewriting or a ton of work.
Do you guys remember the cost of the last 10,000 unit GPU they turned on? I think it was in like August or September of last year. Because that was an NVIDIA based one, I think, but I don't remember what that one cost.
I think H100s are going for around 40,000 for like a DGX system with a few H100s in it or something like that. So um, it's not 40,000 times 10,000, but maybe 40,000 times 10,000 divided by four or something like that.
You also have to add in like power,
Oh yeah, they got
racks,
like
all that other stuff. Yeah.
InfiniBand networking and everything too. So that's like a whole other deal. So it was expensive. They said they're spending $2 billion on compute over the next year. The last time they mentioned it.
Yeah, one other thing to keep in mind here, Omar, is like when Dojo was announced, it was pretty novel. But then I think about a year or so later, the TPU-4 paper was published by Google. And in that, they actually showed not just a 2D lattice of chips, but a 3D lattice that they were doing. So it's been proven that it can work. And per my understanding, there's people in the audience who know more than me, but per my understanding, that was also a very basic ASIC design. So I think there is some precedent that it could work pretty well for these very specific training needs. And I think maybe it's Dojo 2, maybe it's Dojo 1. I don't know which one they're going to go large scale with, but I imagine that as long as it runs transformer training pretty well and they have a compiler team that's dedicated to it, anybody they hire in to work on this is not going to have to learn any specifics. They're going to write their code the same way they did it always. And in a lot of, AI like specific teams, they'll have the people that work on Python to do the modeling and the research side. Sometimes you have somebody who then converts that Python into C++. And then sometimes either the same team or another team is doing like CUDA optimization, which is like very little stuff.
What's weird is Like, why didn't they announce this on the earnings call? Like, this is a big investment. It's kind of weird.
Well, don't you think that's an
Rohan did
indication this
allude
is
to
not?
it before, obviously, in that tweet the day Elon did his 15% or 25% thing.
Meta, if you were a betting man, would you say this is Dojo or Nvidia,
I
or
would assume it's
mostly?
mostly Dojo with some Nvidia would be my guess.
With a sprinkle of NVIDIA.
Yeah, because it's probably like a 90-10 because my assumption is you have some legacy pipelines that run really well on Nvidia. You don't need to rewrite all that. That like just thinking about how Elon thinks, he'd probably pull out his hair if you went up to him and he said, I'm going to spend all this time to rewrite this so we can run on a chipset, and you're going to get basically no gain out of that. That's a total waste of time. So instead, just keep running it on NVIDIA, co-locate it so you don't have bandwidth issues, have some shared storage, so, an SSD wall if you need it, and shared address space, and you're good to go. I make it sound simpler. There's a lot more to obviously getting the power everywhere and cooling, but yeah.
I mean, whether it's Dojo or NVIDIA, either way, it's good to see this investment.
Yeah, adding more training compute is probably one of the most important things the company can be doing, along with ramping 4680.
It feels like the training compute, to me personally, feels like I don't know why they waited so long on it. Maybe there's other reasons, like they were waiting for Dojo. That would make a lot of sense. If they were just going to build out a huge data center of just NVIDIA, and that's what they're doing, and that's what we find out this was, then I think we might as well just call Dojo dead, because that would be very weird.
Yeah.
And I think they've got a facility here in California in the Palo Alto Center. As a matter of fact, when I went to AI Day 2, they said that's where Dojo is going to be, right on the other side of that wall, here at the Palo Alto Engineering HQ. Since then, we've also heard them setting up a training facility in Texas. Texas does have much lower cost power, much lower cost land. Tesla has obviously a big facility there. And they have a ton of renewable power in Texas, which is also good to be training on renewables if you can. So now, we got the West Coast, we got the middle of the country, and now we got the East Coast too. So we're looking pretty good on natural disasters or anything like that, really. We're pretty well spread out across the country. So I imagine it just took time to figure out really where to put it. And I think the Buffalo location, since they already have a presence there, makes a lot of sense. Although, I'm not sure if, like, my dad used to live in Buffalo when he first came to this country. He went to SUNY Buffalo, and it sounds like a really cold place that isn't necessarily the kind of place where the best talent in the world might want to live. But yeah, I think in terms of just running a data center there, they can probably do it.
Yeah, one thing I would highlight around the comments around labelers, even though they have an auto labeler, they still have labelers because the auto labeler is trained by looking at humans doing either labeling or ranking of labels. This is a very common way to do it, right? You train a reward model. So you can imagine somebody sees two visuals of the vehicle's planned route, how long it stops, etc., in like a simulation or in a real world. The data, probably not real world, but simulation. It comes down, a human would look at it and say, which of these is better? Maybe why? That data then is used to train up the reward model, and then the reward model is used to do the unsupervised learning. So this cluster being built out, if we saw an increase in postings at some point of labelers, I wouldn't freak out and think they're like not doing well. That would probably be more of a signal that they are doing well.
In the replies, Jeremy points out, don't forget about Wyoming.
No, there's
945.
nothing in Wyoming. Kanye's in Wyoming. Someone from Bloomberg DM me. They said, "Hey, I don't think this data center's in Wyoming. I think that's where Kanye lives." I said, "Oh, okay. No data center in Wyoming."
I did want to ask, do you guys see the post from Rafer Tesla about the 4680s from BYD?
Yeah, let's start talking about that. But before that, just a quick announcement. We are not accepting requests to speak. The speakers are set ahead of the space. If you have a question or a comment, please leave it in the replies. I am constantly monitoring the replies. If there's a good question, I'll bring it up. All right, at the top of your screens is a post from Ray on BYD's new battery cells, 4680 and 46120 LFP battery cells. Meta, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I saw this post and I asked, but I didn't get a response as to like what the context was behind this. It's interesting that they're showing this off. I assume this is at an auto show and they're trying to sell this or convince other automotive companies to also buy 4680s. And I don't think you would necessarily do that unless you were close to being ramped up enough to start delivering. So I wonder if BYD is now going to be able to be at a place where they could start shipping some 4680s to Tesla. The thought being that for all the vehicles and the variants of Cybertruck that don't qualify for the credit anyway, you might as well use Chinese BYD 4680s, right?
Well, 4680 LFP, right?
That's
What do
even
you
better,
think?
isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, so what would Tesla use them for?
Beast, maybe Cyber Beast or Semi, or maybe they just put them in the Model Y and they say, screw it, we're not getting the credit anyway.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to
Well,
say
they
that.
can put them
I
in
think
Chinese and
this is,
European ones.
yeah. You think
I mean,
they might,
what were you saying?
you think they might put it in Cybertruck maybe? I mean, they put Cybertruck in some Chinese stores. Do you think they might put it in there? Maybe a rear-wheel drive
It
version?
could be the solution for the standard range Cybertruck. It would explain the low acceleration and the lower range, but would just be the same pack, but with a different type of 4680 cell.
Agreed. Yeah, I think right now, if you're Tesla, there's two things you're competing on. One is to try and get the extra credit from the government, and the other one is to just grow your volumes by any means necessary. If it turns out we can't get enough batteries here, maybe it's just better to sell some variants of the vehicle that just don't have the tax credit. It's like, look, if you want your vehicle, you want it quicker, this is what's available. And maybe they throw in some, like, I don't know, laser etching like they did to make people feel better about it.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's just about the Cybertruck. I think Tesla really in time is probably going to move all their vehicles to 4680s, and they'll just ask their suppliers, look, if you can just make the vehicle in this format, that'd be good. We're giving you enough volume that, you can afford to do that. You can make this for us. And they can sell it to other companies as well. But I think really what's underappreciated about Tesla and is really the reason why they sold more EVs than anyone else in 2023 is their diversified cell supply approach. So they mentioned that they've got 5 suppliers now for batteries for Tesla vehicles. They've got, of course, Tesla themselves with the 4680 cells. That's a very small percentage of the mix. Just Cybertruck, which is like, almost no units. And then you've got, of course, Panasonic, their oldest supplier. You've got CATL, who's their biggest supplier. You've got LG Chem, which is one of the biggest battery makers in the world. And you have BYD now. So 5 companies. And no matter what battery you have in your vehicle, you still get the same software UI. There might be minor differences telling you to charge to 100 or telling you to charge to 80, but it's really, transparent to the user. They get the same Tesla experience regardless, the same charging, the same supercharging, regardless of who the cell supplier is. So that's actually the key that's allowed them to scale, that they're buying from all the biggest battery makers in the world as much as they can, as well as making their own cells. And that's really their key advantage.
All right.
Do we know if BYD has announced any timelines around 4680s?
I don't know off the top of my head. Omar, do you?
I haven't heard anything.
All right, I'll try to see if I can find some stuff for another space.
Okay. We have a question in the replies from David Larder. Would BYD set up another plant in the US to build these for the standard range Cybertruck and maybe the next gen?
That would make a lot of sense.
BYD does have some manufacturing in the United States, but they've been nervous about entering the US market due to politics. And, they've made some public comments to that effect. So it's unclear, but what we do know is that there is a ton of battery capacity being built up in the United States. And Tesla has the capacity to really bring on any supplier that they think can deliver the volume they need.
Great. Another question. William Lee demonstrated the Wii lithium ion 1000 kilometer battery. Have you guys heard about this one? Okay, we're going to skip that then.
And you often kind of hear about like, oh, Toyota's got this great solid state battery and, it's going to get twice the range or whatever, and then it's going to kill Tesla. But they've really got an architecture where if something like that were to emerge, they could just sort of drop it in and start making vehicles with it too.
Question from Waiting for My Aptera. Could this Buffalo data center be dedicated to training for a certain geography like Europe? Meta?
Let me think about that answer.
Wow, that's the first. You're usually ready with the answer.
I want to ask a follow-up question, but it's not possible right now.
You can ask it and they can reply, or they can come up if you want,
I'll just ask
whichever
it
you
in the
prefer.
replies. I'll just ask it in
Okay.
the replies. 1 second.
Yeah, the no request to speak from listeners is not a hard and fast rule. It's really there to just limit moderation to a minimum. But if somebody has, relationship with one of the speakers, they've reached out ahead of time, cleared their questions, sort of thing, you're more than welcome to do that as well. Machine?
Meta wouldn't, certainly for China or something, wouldn't the compute have to be in China physically? I don't know for Europe what the regulations are. Like, how does that work? I guess it just depends on the domain. But if I just don't understand why the compute would be dedicated to one geographic domain if it's not actually situated in there. I don't understand what the benefit would be.
So the rules around the firewall are a little complex. You can understand that like even engineers sitting in the Palo Alto buildings somehow manage to get a factory running in China. So if they're running a factory in China, then obviously they must have been monitoring the lines. They must have been able to observe the vehicles and what they were doing. So it's not a hard and fast rule that nothing can go in and out of the firewall. The rules are around like how much data can go out. You have to get business certification, you have to have a firewall exception, and there's a policy around it. So the challenge in answering the question, and the reason why I hesitated for a second there, is video leaving is one thing. The neural layout you've learned from the videos leaving is a whole other thing. And then there's a blend in between. So I'm sure China would have a problem. I'm guessing China would have a problem with you just taking a whole bunch of video from random places in China and emitting it outside of China. Like, pretty sure that would not be okay. Um, However, what's been trained leaving, especially from a video feed on a model that doesn't reconstruct the video and only emits plans, might be something you could convince the government of. So does the training need to be there? In part, at least for the video processing part, probably does need to be there. The other part of the question, though, is a little bit more. So the question I wanted to ask was, when they're asking about needing this, are we operating with the assumption that you're going to have to collect the data from China and there is no other countries even close to it or similar to it? And are we operating from the assumption that they don't already run something on the vehicles today in China? Because if they're already running something inside the vehicles, they're already getting a whole bunch of shadow mode about takeovers and things like that. So in theory, they may already have some insight as to how transferable the driving experience actually is.
I mean, they have autopilot and enhanced autopilot, navigate on autopilot, those sort of basic features in China, and they work. So you have kind of an existence proof there that they figured out how to make it work, whatever that method may be. And I think what they've arranged is just that there's a data center in China, that the data that's stored at rest is stored within China, not the United States, that it can't be, used for spying activities, that type of thing. But I think just using it to train the model and improve the product in China, I think is probably okay. And I would bet that they have a GPU cluster within China, and an AI team within China as well.
Is that it? No debate?
No, I'm
We
going to try
need more debate, guys. Come on, the ratings are going lower. We need more
I'm gonna
coffee bets.
I'm
I'm gonna
heading to go test drive the new Model 3.
Oh, nice.
I'm
Meta?
gonna carefully try and play devil's advocate here. We're getting to a place I'm gonna back out of really quickly. Otherwise, here's a scenario: once V12 has launched, and you have your entire team currently focused on that, right? That would make no sense to focus on China before V12 is completed. You have end-to-end working in the United States. You have end-to-end working in Canada. You've driven it down. You're feeling pretty good about where you are. Now you take that model, you run it in shadow mode in China, and you see some issues are cropping up. The metadata of what happened in that situation can still be collected, whether that's via bug reports or that's via there was a stop sign or somebody drove through. Like there's a lot of implicit signals that come up, like the vehicle did something that, or the human did something the vehicle thought was unsafe, or the vehicle was planning something and the human didn't do it. So it tries to figure out why they didn't do it, especially if what the human did, the vehicle didn't think was an acceptable route. So you find all these like disagreements and you continue refining things in the United States and you see these disagreements continue to go down. I don't know why Tesla wouldn't use that data to help them guide what kind of triggers they use to improve things in the entire world. Right. So if that is what they're doing, if they are using triggers from around the world, then you can imagine that things around the world could also improve. So we'll see. I don't know if I'm not yet comfortable saying that they 100% have to have a data center in China. Sorry,
Machine?
AI compute cluster in China, I should say.
Well, I don't really have anything to say on that. I just want to note I amusingly saw a Reddit post in the Bay Area saying, "Do Tesla drivers turn off their brain while driving? Not checking surroundings when changing lanes, passing someone and moving back in front of them at slower speed? Has the computer made them stupid?" And I don't know where they get this from. As I play with Twitter Spaces, mute, unmute on the highway, I don't know why they would think a Tesla driver would be driving it improperly.
Wait
Well, you're
until
not.
V12. They'll be saying, wow, Tesla drivers are all amazing drivers.
I was going to say, well, Machine is not using FSD, so people are looking at him and thinking Tesla drivers are terrible.
All right,
Did he?
Elon. Hold on.
Has,
Elon, 1 second. Elon just replied to Sawyer and says, the governor is correct that this is a Dojo supercomputer, but $500 million, while obviously a large sum of money is only equivalent to a 10,000 H100 system from Nvidia. Tesla will spend more than that on Nvidia hardware this year. The table stakes for being competitive in AI are at least several $billion per year at this point. There you go. That answers our question.
So does that answer that it's both?
And it says Dojo supercomputer.
He says it's a Dojo supercomputer, but in the second paragraph he says they're going to spend even more money on Nvidia.
Yeah, but not necessarily at Buffalo.
Exactly.
I would co-locate it, so I'd be surprised if they don't.
I mean, it's not that big of a deal, right? So this is primarily a Dojo supercomputer. If there's some Nvidia in there, that's great. But I think that this is a bit of a
You cut
that
out there, Emma.
people. Yeah,
Good.
I don't know what happened. It's one of those.
Yeah, it was weird.
Yeah. We'll
I
bring
had to
everyone back.
join. I had to join because this is big news. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And
Well,
many thanks to Sawyer for pulling this out of Elon.
Yes, just wait a little bit for people to kind of roll in. Machine is up here, and now we'll get Meta too, probably. Let's see if he has another one.
Thing I've heard about Dojo ever. So much of it's been prototype, and this is, to me, showing more confidence in its viability as a product, at least, than anything else. So I think it's a big positive. But, I don't know how much this. I've never been that excited about Dojo because I don't know how much better they're going to be able to do than Nvidia, and so it's just compute. Like, I get it might be optimized for the type of training they're doing, but it's just saving some money. I don't know how interesting that is. That's why people obviously were trying to use it as a service for other people to train on. So I mean, maybe eventually, but otherwise, maybe it saves them a bit of money. But it's not super exciting to me. It's bullish, just obviously that they're investing in their future of AI training in general. The same though as buying more Nvidia, and I think he also stated they're going to buy AMD chips as well. So I mean, it's all positive.
All right. I'll pin at the top Elon's reply on AMD chips as well. So this is very much a all of the above kind of approach then, Wes, huh? Just buy all the chips that you can.
The AMD thing, I'm not sure if that's for AI. That's probably the continued partnerships for vehicles and GPUs. There's no infrastructure from AMD yet that's anywhere near the Nvidia level for AI training or inference for that matter. So
Hmm.
I'm not sure that he's commenting on training or inference for that. I mean, this person says any plans to buy any chips from AMD, and it's like, yeah, of course. Like that's what's in our vehicles. It's Ryzen. But this is big news for Dojo and is very different from what he said on the earnings just like so recently. It's just kind of perplexing, honestly. It's pretty amazing. So it feels like two completely different ways to view Dojo from what he said on the earnings call to what is being said here. So I'm honestly like a bit bemused by this. I want to think that Dojo is a huge part of their plan going forward based on this, but like I don't see how you could based on the earnings call. So I don't know. I guess we'll see when this is stood up because it takes a long time to stand up a data center. It's not just going to be overnight. This is in the realm of like 9 months to potentially even 18 months to get this all set up. But maybe he's good at it. Maybe they're going to fast track it. Maybe it'll be up in 3 months. I highly doubt it. So just so people know, like Dojo isn't the generic or what's called data plane compute. They're also going to need large traditional servers for that, not GPUs, but CPUs. So think Intel or potentially even AMD, like a Google Cloud kind of transition to AMD as their kind of data plane, like generic compute, for their VMs to run, because that's how you control the AI training. You control it with this generic compute. So AMD does offer a real robust solution for, just like your standard 1U, 2U racked data center compute clusters. So that's potentially what he's also referring to there. So that's separate from AI training completely. It's like would never be used for AI training, in other words, at least not the kind of training that they're doing. So I just wanted to add that context.
Now, having said that, AMD did mention that they're going to go into AI training as well, right?
Yeah, they said that many years ago, and they've tried. They've tried
I think they recently said it
twice.
again.
Oh, that's great. Good for them. Let's see how they do. Intel has said the same things. I can't tell you how many times. Like, I've been in this industry a long time, so it's great if they do. I'm more power to them. Let's see what kind of infrastructure and tools they can provide, to the community. But the likelihood that they're going to be competitive in this is super, super low.
Would you recommend people buy Nvidia stock then?
This is a huge endorsement of Nvidia for Elon to say this, because if Tesla's doing this, like in any other AI native company or any company that wants or needs to be more efficient in how they handle any type of compute going forward, where they need to, make better decisions with their data, they have to use AI. They just have to. You're going to be run out of business if you don't, if you're a digital company or, definitely an AI native company. And you have to run on Nvidia. There's no competition. There exists nothing. Nvidia has the entire market. Like they're upwards of 99% now. I mean, that's why AMD wants to be in this market, but the likelihood of that happening, even in the next 2 to 3 years, is super low. So yeah, not financial advice, obviously, but I'm considering, even though it's at an all-time high, potentially putting a percent back into Nvidia, which I've had in the past off and on. But this is just, I can't even believe he said that. It's like pretty amazing. So yeah.
When you say for him to say it's a great endorsement, what do you mean specifically? Like, I don't really see anything in that reply to Sawyer.
Oh, sure.
Anything that endorses Nvidia.
Yeah, he's basically saying that they're going to spend several $billion just to be competitive. And that's, going to be with Nvidia. Like, he's saying that very specifically. So that just means that they're going to, obviously, Microsoft is going to have to,
I don't
Facebook,
know.
Google.
I don't know if I agree with you that that's what he's saying here.
He says it
this
straight
project,
away.
Okay. So this project
I
is
think.
500 million. Okay, can I just? He
Go for
says
it.
this project is $500 million, right? He says table stakes for being competitive in AI is multi-billion dollars, several $billion. He says Tesla will spend more than $500 million on Nvidia hardware, but there might be another Dojo supercomputer. Is that not correct?
Yeah, he's clearly saying they're going to spend more than 500 million on Nvidia this year.
That's fine. But
Yeah.
he's not saying everything else, like everything else other than this $500 million project is going to go to NVIDIA. He's not saying that.
True, but the percentage of production training that's occurring on Dojo right now is potentially zero. Because he's never said that they do production training. They said they do training, but not production. So I don't hear any of the engineers talking about it, so I assume zero until I hear engineers start talking about it. When they do, that'll be great. But right now they haven't. So I just make the assumption that the largest percent of their spend is going to be NVIDIA AI infrastructure. Just to be clear, once production does start up on training with Dojo, that will, then you'll start to see the NVIDIA spend drop. It'll peak and then fall off. But, again, I've said this so many times, Jensen is such a competitor. Like, he'll go, okay, like, what kind of speed ups are you getting? Show me your results. What kind of things does CUDA need to do? Like, what kind of features do you need? Do you need to scale? Like, do you need faster transfer rates? Like, he'll just like go after that like nobody's business, trying, just to be sure, like he's always top of the AI game. Like, I've
Well,
seen it firsthand.
I understand Jensen is a competitive CEO, but so is Elon. So, Sawyer?
Hey guys, I'm in the car. If it's loud, that's why.
No, it's fine. We can hear you just fine.
Cool. Yeah, no, it's good to see Elon confirm that. You had so many people walk away from Tesla's Q4 earnings call thinking, well, is Elon saying Dojo's a failure? Or like, he's changing tune. Look what he said. He says there's a low probability of success. Well, actually, he's been saying very similar things for over a year now. And he's basically dispelling of all that crap today with this $500 million investment announcement and confirming that. So there you go. I'm going to put that stupid narrative to bed.
Wes, my question to you is, if it's so much better, why is Dojo supercomputer? Why not wait for more economics?
No, you're sounding robotic to me. Anybody else? Or is it just me?
If NVIDIA is so much better, why is this Dojo?
Well, several reasons. I think the big ones are, if people can hear me okay, if you can't, let me know. The big one is to keep NVIDIA delivering at a very fast pace, and to keep Tesla requested feature sets for their type of needs at the top of essentially the stack, the priority for CUDA developers and their hardware roadmap. So their software and their hardware roadmap. NVIDIA just like other tech companies, when you make hardware and software and services and whatnot, they have roadmaps, and those roadmaps go out 3 years. And their biggest customers always get first priority for their feature needs in that time frame. And if you ever need any like quick fixes, hot fixes, cherry pick stuff, they're at the top. So that's the next kind of reason. Then you also want to get the best prices. So the largest purchasers get the best prices. They get the top yields off of the line. They get first dibs off of any new product. They get any type of fix for the hardware first. Like they're always at the top. So they want to remain at the top. And the best way to remain at the top is not only to purchase a lot, but to also have a competitive product that competes with it. And Google does a similar thing with TPUs. So those are kind of the major reasons. And then the other reasons are a little less major. It involves how developers use the AI hardware. You want to be sure that the developers continue to understand the things that are happening in CUDA, but also are seeing better things happening on the other hardware. And then they can potentially say, hey, we just did this on this other hardware. Can you guys do this? And they go, well, no, but we can do this other thing. And they just keep pushing them even at lower levels. I don't know if that makes sense, but I've seen that happen many, many times where these lower level effects aren't like high level features, but are lower level, like more compiler type things that speed up the hardware and training aspects vastly. So I hope that makes sense.
Thank you. 5 years from today, what percent of AI training production do you think is being done on Dojo versus Nvidia clusters versus others?
I'll give you in 1 year, I think if it isn't at least 20%, I don't see them pursuing it. Mainly because they're going to have acquired so much AI training hardware on Dojo that if they can't get it to work in some X amount of time, and I'm putting a year on that time, then I can't see them pursuing it. Whereas like on Google's side, they put a certain amount of money in for 5 years, and they were seeing like several orders of magnitude improvement in cost per inference request, and speed of inference request was greatly sped up as well. So they saw the benefits, like they could see it, but Tesla hasn't realized that yet. And I think we're in year 6 now. Maybe somebody can correct me if that's wrong, but I think we're in year 6 now of Dojo development, and they still have yet to show production efficiencies. And I can't imagine X amount of time being forever. So my thought is that if you can't get at least like 1/5 of that training in another year, I just don't see them pursuing it, because it's like you can't do it for infinity. In 5 years, like I would expect all of Dojo training, and you wouldn't have any NVIDIA training anymore. And that assumes that your whole infrastructure is now built around Dojo. You don't need CUDA. You don't need any NVIDIA hardware. Your entire stack is specifically designed for Dojo. And there's other companies like Chris Latner's company, which Chris used to work for Tesla. That didn't work out so well. So not sure how much Elon's going to be using the Mojo middleware stuff that Chris is building. But I shouldn't say we, but people in the industry, I think, would gravitate towards Dojo if Tesla like moved all the way over there. So I can see Tesla pushing extremely hard for a short term from today, like a year. And then if they do succeed, then they will be fully on Dojo within 2 years. So I wouldn't even say 5. Like it just moves way too fast for that. 5 years for AI is more than an eternity. That's like 2.5 eternities. So that would be my prediction.
All right, thank you. Sawyer, do you have anything else to add to what Wes said.
No, I was going to actually ask Wes, why do you think they would put it in Buffalo? Obviously, they have a history of having manual labelers there for FSD. And I know like Apple and many other big companies often put data centers in more cool climates because it's cheaper to keep the whole data center cold and it's less expensive from an electricity standpoint. Um, Obviously, it's still in the U.S. It's near Canada, which has really cheap energy, but it's still in the U.S. and New York. I'm curious to get your thoughts on why Buffalo versus, let's say, Texas or California.
Yeah, sure. Maybe a tiny bit of reasons why data centers are where they're at. One, it's not necessarily cold anymore because most data centers are designed with this infrastructure called hot aisle, and they're actually run at more ambient temperatures and they're not cooled because the modern chips can run at much higher temperatures. So there's that. So you don't necessarily have to run them in cooler climates. The main reason where you put data centers due to like three major reasons. One of them is tax benefits, which I think is what Buffalo is offering right now. Very, very low energy costs, which also Buffalo has because of the energy generation around that area. And then I think also the major thing is partnerships, and Buffalo already has Tesla there. So I think that those kind of things make it a really good place for them to put this data center. Also, you don't want all your data centers to be localized in one area. Disaster recovery is a big concern. So, for instance, if you were thinking about, hey, like once we have one data center that's big enough to do our training, we should also have another one in another locale that can do the same amount of training so that if there was a disaster in one area, you could have a backup, a complete backup. We call that active in cloud services. So that's another potential reason why it's in Buffalo. There you go.
Appreciate the insight. I got to run, but thank you.
Yeah, sure
Okay.
thing.
I see Meta in the crowd if he wants to come up and talk. Otherwise, we're getting close to the end of the space. I see Gally if he wants to come up and ask questions or comment on recent news. He's welcome to come up. Meta, any sorry we got cut off in the prior space, but we're back now. You saw Elon's replies. Any additional
I think it's
thoughts?
quite telling that Elon saying we'll buy from AMD, we're buying from Nvidia. He's talking kindly about Nvidia. I think it's one of those like, hey, look, we're not about to stop buying from Nvidia, but at the same time, maybe like Dojo getting built out a little bit. I know it can sound like sunk cost fallacy. They've already spent a whole bunch of money building these out. They're probably decent. They might as well try and build out the data center, see what they can train on it, and then either they learn from that because now they have a lot of activity on there, or they use that to help with negotiating with Nvidia. Unclear what that would be, but it also seems like he's open to buying from AMD. So it's not about needing Dojo necessarily. I think it's just about needing more compute and getting it wherever they can.
Well, Wes says the chips coming from AMD are not going to be for AI training. He says it's going to be primarily for other purposes.
Why do you say that?
Wes?
Have you tried training anything on AMD?
Have you seen their
They just don't offer good solutions currently. Anything that rivals Nvidia.
Yeah, but have you seen the MI series?
No. Is this
Yeah,
new?
it's pretty new.
Yeah. It's totally fine if people want to like try and use AMD for AI, and if they do have a package that offers acceleration there, that's great. But I haven't seen them do anything in regards to like trying to compete with like MLPerf or offering like any type of model help you know, for models that work better on their infrastructure, you know, things like that. I think it sounds like they're very early days, which is great, but also like AMD can be used for generic data center compute, you know, data plane type stuff. And also, you know, obviously they use it for their vehicles. So they're going to, obviously they still, you know, are partnering with AMD.
Yaman, no hands mode.
Wes, I'll do a coffee bet with you. Tesla will buy AMD chips for AI training purposes in the hundreds of millions of dollars range sometime in the next 5 years.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Happy to take that.
All right.
Now that the bet has concluded,
Yeah.
Wes, they have done ML perf on the MI series, by the way.
I did not see those in the results. Where did they come in?
Do you want to just buy me my coffee now?
Oh, it's fine. If AMD competes with Nvidia in AI training, that would be wonderful. It'd be great for Nvidia to have a competitor. It'll only make the industry go faster. So it's well worth a coffee.
Yeah, if AMD enters the space, AI training space in a major way, and takes some market share from from Nvidia, Tesla is the biggest winner here. You know, it's very important. Like if I was Elon, I would actually buy a few $100 million, even if it's somewhat inferior to Nvidia's solution for now. To the same
Mine,
person, I mean, say a reason. Let's say one of the reasons would be to kind of keep Nvidia on their toes. You know, allow AMD some sort of initial startup customer to allow AMD to and work with them too, get them going a little bit.
yeah, I think from my understanding, AMD's like chips at a hardware level look stronger and more powerful, but they always lose at the compiler level, which is where NVIDIA's got its biggest strength right now. So the theory is you can always buy the AMD chips now and hope that their compilers get better eventually down the line.
Would you do that?
I think you basically calculate your compute per dollar. You have to buy them in large chunks, like tens of thousands. Uh, and then you basically just buy whichever one is cheapest, but going to keep you homogenous as much as possible, right? Like doing a huge, like if they could get 20 to 40% more compute power going with AMD, and the compiler makes it effectively that they're only getting, say, 10 or 20% uplift, I don't know why you wouldn't do that. Like, I don't think you have to spend time doing CUDA optimizations to squeeze every bit of performance you can out of your NVIDIA hardware. You could just say, okay, we're just going to do things in a more generic way. We're going to get more compute and we're going to be a little bit more hardware agnostic.
Say I'm looking at the results and they only submitted CPUs. I don't see any GPUs that were submitted. Is that your understanding?
I thought they did submit GPUs. Give me 1 second. I'll try to find it for you.
All right. Yeah, I'm just seeing the Epic Genoa CPU. Anyway.
And a question for Meta, 2 questions. One, in 5 years' time, what percent of Tesla's AI training do you think will be done on Nvidia chips, Dojo, and AMD, and others. So 4 categories: Nvidia, Dojo, AMD, and other. That's question
Really
number 1.
hard to it's really hard to predict. It depends on the success of Dojo. From a cost perspective, even if Dojo is successful, Nvidia may still end up being cheaper because they have such high margins, they could really just keep cutting the prices down for special deals. So my gut says it's probably still going to be dominated by Nvidia.
Okay, but are you saying like 80% Nvidia and then 20% Dojo, 0 for AMD and others? Like, can you
I don't,
just, you're giving
I
what we
don't,
know today.
yeah, I think it's hard for me to give percentages. I could maybe do a stack rank and say it'd probably go Nvidia and then either probably Dojo AMD or AMD Dojo. I don't know about others. I don't know if I think it's more of a AMD serves the purpose that Dojo did, which is negotiation power with Nvidia. But really what they want is Nvidia chips.
And then the second question is, if I have an AI model being trained on Nvidia chips, and Elon walks in and says, I want you to train this on Dojo. I don't care how much time it takes, how much more money it costs, and now I'm kind of like stuck with it. How much time would it take me to convert it, make the necessary adjustments so that I can train it on Dojo?
Assuming it's written in C++, it comes down to if there's an adapter or something that has been written. The more optimized the code was for NVIDIA, the longer it will take for you to port it. If they didn't do any kind of like optimizations or anything along those lines, they're probably fine.
So it's doable. It's not ideal from an engineer's perspective, but it's doable, and it wouldn't break the bank for Dojo. Wes, do you agree with that?
Potentially. If anything's doable. I just don't know how probable it would be.
What's the incremental cost? Let's say, okay, I guess you guys don't want to answer this question. What do you want to talk about?
Hey, I've only got a few more minutes, but I did look up. AMD has an accelerator that they've designed for HPC. They say AI too, but it looks way more like it's geared towards high performance computing, which is more, in the data analysis sector and trying to churn out results for like financial algorithms and whatnot, and like weather prediction and stuff like that. More traditional ways of looking at data rather than AI. And granted, they might be trying with AI, but it seems like it's more geared towards HPC. But that's from the little bit that I hadn't even heard about this accelerator. So kudos to Meta for pointing that out, because I had to dig a little bit through results and try to find this accelerator that AMD put out.
Yeah, they haven't done a great job. I think right now it's just the key thing is it has more memory. Like it's a husk that has potential, but it needs the software to make it shine. And I think there have been some folks claiming that maybe the divide's getting less and less, but I think there's a bit of a industry wants something to be true versus it's actually true. There's a lot of companies out there that are probably rooting for AMD so that Nvidia has some competition so that their costs can come down.
Yeah, it'd be great if there was more competition from a company that was actually making GPUs to compete with NVIDIA, rather than these other companies that have to get in the game just to keep Nvidia honest, essentially.
And it also has to be a company that's not going to hide it behind a cloud.
That's true, because we are aware of some of those.
Do you guys have any shares in Nvidia or AMD?
I have probably some through index funds.
Same. I used to be a very huge supporter of AMD back when I worked at Dell. Even though we didn't have any type of supply chain from them, I was always rooting for them because Intel had such a stranglehold on the industry. And they've done pretty well over the years. And when they bought ATI, I was hoping that they would, really take off. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. So I used to own them. And obviously, Nvidia, I've owned for many decades. And I need to peace out. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
I think from this space, I got more things I need to research. So thank you. Always a different experience with Yaman.
Yeah, it's evolving. It's a moving target. You never know what you're gonna get. Like even when I enter the space, when I start the space, I have no idea what the discussion is gonna be that day.
Did you see that Omar is going to be doing a comparison drive between V11 and V12?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I'm pretty excited for this. That's going to be good.
Yeah. Yeah. As a reminder to people, we're not accepting any requests to speak, especially from people I've never seen before. If you have a request to speak and you're not accepted, you're welcome to submit your question or comment in the replies. If you continue to request to speak, I will kick you off the space. Henry has a comment in the replies. Meta, I'm going to read this. It's a bit of a long one. Let's see if you agree with it. Henry says,
Okay.
the reason Elon Musk said what he said about Dojo is because the demand for AI chips went berserk in 2023. Tesla had a shot prior to this event because Nvidia was focused on a general application chip that could do more than just AI applications. The Dojo chip's advantage was that it can be designed to do this niche workload better than Nvidia could with this general purpose GPU. Now that there's insane demand for this particular application, Nvidia will focus a shit ton more R&D and other resources to be the absolute best at AI applications. Tesla doesn't have the resources to compete with Nvidia now that their focus has shifted. The only chance Tesla's Dojo has now if they partner with Lisa Su and AMD to take on Nvidia. The team that designed Dojo came from AMD. They are using similar approaches with MCM designs. Jim Keller had his hands on Dojo and EPIC products. Both companies need to do something to bridge the gap between them and Nvidia, in his opinion. What do you think?
Some of the claims that were made at the Dojo announcement, I'm just going based on what the claims were, if I recall correctly, was that it takes about 2 years to fabricate and 4 years to design a chip. If that's true, and hold me to if you don't recall that exactly that way, but if that is true, then it was about 2 years later that the H100s came out after the Dojo announcement. So it's unlikely that NVIDIA was operating in a silo, completely unaware that AI is coming, and Tesla did the presentation, and then NVIDIA was like, oh, we should probably do something similar. And then that's what kicked them off to do it, designed it, fabricated it, and got it all done within 2 years and started selling it. So I think more likely what happened is everybody was in the same direction. Other companies weren't talking about it, and Tesla announced. And so perception from like at least retail investor side is that they came out first. If you recall in spaces back then, we talked about the same thing, and people talked about how Dojo's gonna be a cloud compute and this and the other, and I kept saying like that doesn't actually make any sense, right? They're gonna have to satisfy their own needs first. And then the last thing that's a bullet point on this is like by the time the TPU4 paper came out, they mentioned how it was already in production for a year or more. I don't remember how long they said. So that paper came out, I think, a year after Dojo. So by the time Dojo was announced, there was already something arguably more power efficient and advanced already in production at scale. So I think there's a big difference between this industry being secretive, and some companies being further ahead versus, you know, where what was available to Tesla. So Tesla couldn't purchase something or hang their hat on something they didn't know was coming. So I think in the vacuum of time at that point, it made sense to try and make a bet on it. Even if they didn't get there, it might still make sense to do it if it per unit ends up being cheaper for them. They could make less efficient machines. They don't have to be more efficient. As long as per dollar it comes out to be less, it's fine. And when I say per dollar, I mean per dollar of electricity and per dollar of fabrication, which should be pretty close.
All right, thank you. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Not really. I think I want to go research more about this 4680s. And yeah, I think I just have more stuff to read up on.
The BYD stuff?
Yeah, I'm trying to. I don't know how to find out like their roadmaps or plans or anything like this. So I'm trying to like figure out what's a good way to find out other than like asking people who speak Chinese on Twitter or Mandarin. Sorry,
Yeah, you can. Did you try asking Ray?
I did. He didn't respond. I was just
Oh, okay.
curious, like, what was the context behind this photo? He like posted the photo and it's like, are you at an auto convention? Like, what's going on here?
Yeah. I mean,
And
we're
I'm
looking
looking
at
up. As I'm looking it up, there's a lot of information. Like you can even purchase 4680 LFP batteries, but they're all like box shaped. So I don't know why they're being called 4680s. I'm a little bit confused as to what's going on because 4680 is about the cylindrical shape. So how can you have a box shaped 4680? It doesn't make sense to me. Anyway,
yeah.
I'm not an expert on batteries, so it takes me a lot longer to digest what I'm reading.
Um, I mean, it sounds like we're gonna have 8 lines of 25 gigawatt hours per year production by the end of this year, maybe early next, if it's delayed. That's 200 gigawatt hours, right? Plus all the
Two,
other supply
yeah, and how many? So it's 120 roughly in every vehicle, 120 kilowatts,
for Cybertruck. Yeah.
kilowatt hours. Yeah. Okay, so what do you think is going to be the average per vehicle?
Well, we don't quite know what all those 4680s are gonna go into, right? It's not gonna be just Cybertruck, probably.
Yeah, you're right. Because even if it was just Cybertruck, just doing rough math, it's like over 1.5 million. So that'd be too many.
Yeah. Do you think the next gen compact vehicle is going to use 4680s?
Yeah, that would make sense. Like I think they've mentioned this in the past. It doesn't make sense to take existing lines off of existing decks, existing uh, cell production lines. So I don't think I know people say 4680 is going to eventually make its way to Model X and S. I don't think that makes sense. They probably just keep making those on 2170s. Why would you rip out the lines that are already doing that and the suppliers and all that kind of stuff? You've already done all the work to get that whole thing up and running. Just let it run until you turn that vehicle down, at which point you just take those and put them into like a mega pack or something. I don't think they're ever going to stop using any cell configuration that they already use today, so long as the manufacturers continue to make it. There's no value in going homogeneous and then opening those cells up to competitors.
Well, the only value would be if we're producing 4680s in US versus importing the 18650s, right? Then we
Why not
qualify
do
for the
both?
credit. No, I mean for SX.
Oh, I see what you're saying. But the 2170s are made in the States too.
Well, the SX use
Sorry, the
18650.
18650s. Yeah, the 18650s. Good point. That could be the case, but I think they have enough global demand, hopefully, or maybe that's why they're trying to advertise in other countries to generate global demand so that they can reroute all the batteries they can get.
Yeah, just wanted to make sure that I'm not missing anything here, that it's not kind of black and white, clear cut that I'm missing. It's still kind of up in the air what the
Yeah, I think
4680s are going to be.
maybe semi finally makes sense, right? Because semi was probably going to take a lot more batteries no matter what.
Don't you think that's going to come from Nevada production, though?
In theory, right? Because they're making it in Nevada, it would make sense. And they're
Hmm.
expanding in Nevada too. That would make sense. But I don't know enough. Like, why use 18650s? Or sorry, yeah, why use 18650s instead of uh 48? Oh my God, what's going on with my brain?
4680s. That's okay.
4680s. Thank you.
It's a Friday. Friday.
My brain's fried.
Yeah, same. I feel the same. Um, it sounds like it's time for a coffee bet, though. If your brain's fried.
Oh no.
No.
And that's my cue.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Anyway, we're kind of going over 2.5 hours anyway. So the thing with going over 2 hours is now I have to listen to 2 hours of content to take the notes and publish for the patrons. So it actually doubles. It goes exponentially for me.
Let me send you an article on how to use Whisper.
Oh, there you go. Okay. Yeah, that would work. That would be great. Thank you. Did you see I started a YouTube channel too?
I saw, but I haven't had a chance to watch it yet.
Oh, that's okay. You've probably seen it a few times.
All right,
Guess
I
what I posted?
subscribe
I
to
mean,
it.
come on.
Oh my
Guess
God. Is it going to be that 6-second clip that you keep telling people to re-listen to?
it's so important. And now the YouTube subscribers can listen to it too. There
I
you go.
thought maybe, just maybe, it was going to be the clip where Sawyer came into the space, not knowing what he was signing up for.
Yeah. No, I'm not going to do that too. You know what I'm going to do though? I think for YouTube, I'm going to take clips from this space. I don't think I'm going to post the entire space onto YouTube. I'm going to take clips from this space and post it on X and YouTube at the same time. And if people prefer to listen to it on X, they can listen to it on X. If they want to listen to it on YouTube, YouTube also offers chapters, I guess, sections or what have you, whatever it's called. I can
You
do
can do that
that.
on X now too, by the way.
Oh yeah, there you go. I can do that
I
on
don't know
X.
how, but I saw Omar did it once.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so if people could please go up, I pinned it at the top. Subscribe to my YouTube channel because I need to get to 500 subscribers to be able to monetize. And as soon as I do that, I can turn it on. And then, if you want to listen to it on YouTube, you can listen to it on YouTube, what have you.
Oh, there's one other thing that's kind of interesting. There's a interesting chatbot competitor or competition thing, leaderboard, whatever you want to call it. It's I shared the link out a little while ago. You might find it interesting if people want to try it. It's a open source project. There's over 200,000 like games that have been played at this point. But basically, you generate a prompt or you put in your own prompt. It asks two random LLM models, and you pick which model left or right that you like better. And they're using this to kind of like use the ELO scoring like you do with chess to basically figure out which AI models are doing best. And yeah, I think it's interesting. Grok is not on there yet, but I think it'd be really interesting to see. And I think it gives you a little bit more insight into how powerful branding can be, because I think some of the models that people perceive from a brand perspective to be the best may not be scoring as high.
Yeah. Dude, we don't have a coffee bet in like days.
We have a coffee bet that's about to expire. I'll have my
No, no.
first win of the year
The
because I
back
lost
the
you one bet.
what was that one?
I don't remember, but I lost one bet with you. I just remember I lost it.
What's the one you're about to win?
Oh, FSD V12 wide before the end of the month.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. You're right. You're not remembering.
You might still win, but it's not looking likely.
I mean, last time you said that, what was that release about? What was that V11 on hardware 4, I think, and then like
Yeah, it
literally
was
the
V11
next
on hardware
day.
4, and I was off by 3 days
Yeah,
on a
like literally
6-month
we.
bet.
Yeah, exactly. Something
I
like
like taking these long shots, and then I'm like, I don't hedge the last little bit.
that. um,
Because I remember
yeah.
that conversation went where you're like, roughly how long would it take? And I like try to back out the earliest it could possibly come out. And then you're like, fine, coffee bet.
Mm-hmm. No, we need to fill that backlog of coffee bets though. This is not good.
All right. How long do you think it takes for this Buffalo data center to come online?
Not before 2026.
Wow. Okay. Not before 2026. Is that what they said in the press release?
No, I didn't read the press release.
Oh, I would take before 2026 if you want a coffee bet. There's no way it takes that long.
Okay. When do you think it's going to come online?
I was thinking like mid next year was going to be what I try to get try to
How
get for
is that?
myself.
We're only 6 months.
You said 2026.
I said not before 20. So December 31, 2025, and you're saying mid next year. So mid 2025?
I thought you were saying end of 2026 by your
No,
standard
no.
buy
I said
statement.
before.
Okay.
I said no. I didn't say buy. I said before, not
Gotcha.
before 2026.
Your trickery. It made me
Dude,
think.
it's not my problem if your English is not great.
Hey, I speak more than one language, which I'm sure you do too, but still.
Yeah, yeah. So, okay, so you still want to take the coffee bet? I mean, I guess it's more interesting now because the
It's
way you kind of
well,
responded, like it's
now
going
we
to be like
both came to the
tomorrow.
same conclusion, so it's not that great. I don't know that I feel that good about this coffee bet anymore.
Well, it's on. You took it already.
I mean, the one I was agreeing to was by the end of 2026, but fine.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree. It's probably like 18 months. It sounds about right.
yeah, and it's New York, crying out loud, you know.
No, it's Buffalo. Well, there they have some data centers that already run for other companies. I think they have a lot of hydropower and stuff, right? So there's reasons why it's considered attractive.
Buffalo, New York, right?
Yeah, yeah. Not
Okay.
New York City though, but
No,
yeah,
no, not New York City.
Buffalo. I think they do have some data centers out there. So I'm guessing they can maybe hire existing companies out there to do work they've done before, and it won't be like
The
starting
thing
from
is, like, how
scratch.
are we going to be able to know? Like, we're not going to know.
Yeah,
I
we
don't
would
know if
only
this
know
is a
if they
great
announce
coffee
it.
bet. Yeah,
They would have to
exactly.
announce it like in an earnings call that it's completed or something.
Yeah, and then like there's different stages, of like what
Yeah, all
your
right.
definition of
So I
completion.
agree. No coffee bet.
There you go. I gave you an out. You're
I
welcome.
took it.
uh,
Yeah,
well, we
by the
have to
way,
find
the
another one.
supercharger thing, every single time I see like a conversation come up, I like that you put up like an exact number, 1 billion.
Hmm.
Have you
Hmm.
broken out? You were asking like questions for Patreon. I think that might be a very interesting article if you decide you want to do it. I can also request this to you via chat, but it might be an interesting article to break out financially how you think you would spend and how much you would spend on advertising and maybe even which regions.
I wouldn't spend anything with that.
Sorry, by advertising, I mean like on superchargers or let's say marketing, whatever is the superset of
I
advertising and
wouldn't
spending
spend
money
any
for
money on
ranks.
marketing either.
I'm counting superchargers as part of it. How would you spend $1 billion to raise more awareness?
Superchargers. I wouldn't even care about awareness. Like I would just, um, I think the referral program is fine. Um, it is a fact that on a sticker price basis, we're still a little higher than alternatives like Camry and RAV4 and everything. Um, I wouldn't worry about the awareness thing. I would just kind of let that play out through the referral program, and that's it. I would just focus on next gen vehicle and FSD, Dojo, 4680s. I would just focus on that.
How do you
I think
pick
this.
where you put the superchargers? Do you like basically do you put the superchargers in high visibility areas even if it costs more, or do you try to go for maximum number of stalls and like kind of where people want them?
I would definitely put them where people want them, where people need them, based on my experience of kind of building them out over the last 10 years plus. Um, like I wouldn't change the location to a more visible thing just because of marketing ad purposes, But if I'm going to, let's say, I have a plan out, a year from now, I'm going to put on point A. Another year after that, I'm going to put on point B. I would maybe bring point B closer if I can, with permitting, allowing employees, allowing and everything. I would bring the second one also to year one. That's how I go about, but I wouldn't change the location of point B. And I might put it's such an easy win to put up a whole big T onto these things and let people, ICE drivers who drive by every day, see it. Like, do you think there's a reason why they may not be doing that?
I'm guessing they maybe have to pay for signage, or there might be like local ordinance about signage and things like that.
Yeah, if it's just financial reasons, barring that it's it's not going to cost that much more, right? I
Yeah,
would
I
do
imagine
that.
you just have to apply for permits and stuff. Yeah, like they do it at some places, like the Kettleman Charger, the one they're building in LA, like the dining. They have these huge, like a couple of examples. But I remember when Kettleman first launched, there was this thought that they were going to do that for all the locations. And they've done it in like Las Vegas and a couple of other places, but they haven't really done these huge supercharger locations since. And I'm wondering if that's just because getting all that power to all those stalls in one spot is a bit of a challenge unless it's in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, I would not be frivolous about the spending. I would just accelerate the spending that I'm already planning on doing anyway. That's what I would do on supercharger
That's
fronts.
good. Yeah, that's a fair argument. It's like, look, what are we planning to spend in the next 5 years? Let's try to do as much of it in the next 2 years as we can.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
All right. Well, I don't think we have a coffee bet. Thanks.
All right. Good discussion. Do you think we should keep going on Saturdays, Sundays, and everything?
I think weekends are good to have off,
You want to have the weekend
unless
off?
there's some kind of crazy news.
News. Okay. Okay. How else do you think I can add value on Patreon?
I think people like when you get really meticulous in detail, like you did with the Toyota, vehicle pricing and tracking and all that stuff. And tweets are like an okay way to go about it. But if you look at what Troy Teslike does, and he has like these detailed analyses. I know it takes a lot of time, so
Mm-hmm.
completely understand if that's not the thing. But something in that vein. You already have a lot of like content and positions that you have, maybe just codifying those. I also personally think it's okay for people to support you just because they want to support you, and you don't have to necessarily have like crazy, crazy value on Patreon. But up to you.
Okay. We can talk about it in private too. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks, Meta. And unless we get news over the weekend, we'll probably be back on Monday. But if I do anything over the weekend, you'll know about it. Thank you and enjoy your Fridays.